Welcome to our Everyday English course. My name's Jessica, and this is our first tutorial on English spelling. You'll need a pen and paper to memorize skills and to learn the spelling techniques. We'll start our tutorial with an explanation about why English spelling is worth looking at, and with a bit of history. Then we'll talk about 7 basic rules of spelling, tips on correct spelling with some spelling strategies that we recommend, words with silent letters, some examples, and do's and don'ts of spelling. The main disadvantage of English spelling is that in English, learning to read and write is exceptionally difficult, and with English, students need much more help than with other languages. You probably wonder why we can't spell like we speak. Why is English spelling so strange? Why are there silent letters in our words when we don't even pronounce them? Let's look at why English spelling is the way that it is. The history. Did you know that most silent letters used to be pronounced and were then eventually dropped? But the spelling was fixed, so we kept the same spelling. Do you know who caused our spelling problems? I'll tell you. The French, who invaded and colonized England in 1066, caused the biggest headaches, forcing their spellings onto ours. For example, they added a silent U to guilty and guest, and added the G in words like light, daughter, and bright. The printers and publishers of the late 1400s added their own strange spellings to the mix, a lot using Dutch spellings like yacht instead of yacht spelt Y-O-T-T, and ghost and ghastly, and of course also favouring French spellings. The Renaissance academics in the 16th century caused chaos with their obsession with Latin. They wanted a more authoritative spelling system and thought our spelling should reflect Latin, so they added the silent B in debt and doubt, and a silent P in receipt, and a silent L in salmon to reflect their Latin roots. So here are 7 basic rules of spelling. Rule number 1. Remember I before E. Remember that the letter I comes before E except after C, or when sounding like an A, as in neighbour or way. There are, however, some exceptions that include either, neither, weird, and Cs. Rule number 2. Learn when to double. Double the final consonant before adding an ending if the root word is 1 syllable long and ends in a consonant preceded by a vowel, for example, bedding, or stressed on the last syllable, for example, controlling. Rule number 3. Know when not to double. Don't double the final consonant if the root word is 1 syllable long and ends in either 2 vowels followed by a consonant, for example, feel becomes feeling with 1 L, or 2 consonants, for example, end becomes ending with 1 D. Or if the stress is on the first syllable, for example, savour becomes savouring with 1 R. Rule number 4. Know when to drop the E. Drop the E at the end of a word if you're adding an ending that begins with a vowel. For example, enrage becomes enraging. If the ending starts with a consonant, keep the E. For example, absolutely. A tip here is that if a root word ends in a CE or GE, keep the E when you add able or us. Rule number 5. Know why. If you're adding an ending to a word that ends in a Y, only change the Y to an I if a consonant comes before the Y. For example, pettiness. Rule number 6. Obey pluralization rules. To make words plural, add es to words ending in ss, sh, ch and x. Otherwise just add an s. For example, dresses, brushes, churches, and boxes. If the word ends in a consonant and then a y, change the y to I before adding an es. For example, party becomes parties. A tip here would be, for most nouns ending in f or fe, add ves. But as with all English rules, there are many exceptions. Rule number 7. Know when to pick ICK. Spell a word that ends with the sound ick, with an ICK if it's one syllable, and with an IC if it's two syllables. The exception is compound words, a word made by joining two words. They always end in ICK. Did you know researchers haven't found a link between being a bad speller and a lack of intelligence? So here are the tips on correct spelling with some spelling strategies we recommend. One of the best ways to get spellings into our brains and long-term memory is by using memory tricks to help remember the difficult bits, especially how many letters there are or if there is a silent letter in the word. One memory trick I use is the word within the word strategy. For example, how many D's are there in a dress? Just think, add a dress. You are so young. Listen to the list. Be sure to measure your measurements. Coming up with your own memory tricks helps you remember them. Now let's go on with 5 ways to learn how to spell. 1. Knowing the history of words, useful for silent letters. 2. Knowing how words are made up, the prefixes and suffixes. Example, comfort, able is uncomfortable, where is the prefix and able is the suffix. 3. Knowing spelling rules and letter patterns, like OUGHT and EIGH, ITCH, IVE, and SCR. 4. How word families are linked together, like 2, 12, twice, 20, between, twist. They all begin or they all have a TW in them. 5. Pronunciation, how we say words. Some words are just spelt just as they sound. So learn words the old-fashioned way, which is memorizing them by heart, and then practice, practice, and practice. Did anyone tell you that practice makes perfect? But that's only if you're practicing it right. Each time you spell a word wrong, you're practicing the wrong spelling. So if you're not sure how to spell the word, find out, then practice that spelling. Keep an ongoing notebook of words, so you've got your own personal dictionary and you can see your progress. Start small though. Don't try to learn all the words at once. Even if you learn them all in one sitting, practice them a few at a time. Find out what works best for you. It may be 1 or 2 words, or as many as 3 or 4. Then add another word to your list, or start on different ones. Each time you learn another word, go back and practice the ones you've learned before, because after all, practice makes permanent. Words with silent letters. A silent letter is a letter that we don't say, and this is one of the reasons why spelling in English is so difficult. Your brain thinks that it has to say all of the letters, but with silent letters that's not the case. In the following slides we'll give you words that have secret letters, and we'll give you the first 3 letters that are at the beginning of the word and another 4 in the middle of the word. Once you learn to do this, it becomes easy for your spelling and your pronunciation will improve. The do's and don'ts of spelling. Write as often as you can. Use the words you like even if you're not sure of the spelling. Try to find your own errors. Make a correct copy of the words you need to learn. And practice the words you want to use and test yourself regularly. Don't bother learning words you'll never use, but concentrate on those that you need. Don't try to learn too many words at once. Pick the most important. And don't rely on the sound of the word for its spelling. Think about it in as many ways as you can. The look, sound, feel, and any memory tricks you can think of to jog your memory. We have to accept that English is just a mess of contradictions, and it's more or less impossible to give fixed rules for pronunciation. So to improve your spelling, read as much as possible from newspapers and books. Listen to radio and television. Listen to news reports and try to write down the words as they are spoken. There are some well-known spelling differences between British English and American English. Many of these spelling differences result from the French influence on English. British English has a tendency to keep the spelling of many words of French origin, while Americans try to spell words more closely to the way that they sound phonetically, and they tend to omit some letters. The general spelling differences between British and American English are listed here on this slide. Now let's move on to the activities. Listen to these words and try to write them. Women. Pronunciation. Recognize. Town. Cough. Allow. English. Wonder. Medicine. Though. Chew. Move. One. Picture. Photography. Teacher. Possessive. Defiant. In activities 2 and 3, just pause the video and write down the following words to memorize. Thank you.